Beautiful Sunday morning today. There's a little bit of haze on the water. Hopefully everybody's having a great weekend. I'm going to try a little bit of fishing. It's now that it's cooled off a little bit. I always come to the middle, and there's rarely ever fish out in the middle. This is my experience. Unless unless it gets a little chilly and they start getting a little deeper. We'll see how we do. As we continue through, as I was coming out here, reading Matthew 25, there was something that right after the parable of the talents, right after that parable, it says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that, they have this image of Jesus coming back and what that might look like. And often they see it in clouds on a white horse, and he's got this flaming sword coming out of his mouth. And when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. So he's literally sitting on the throne. And I think that's where people really kind of fall apart, is they picture this thing that's instant, that goes quick, and that they're just going to get a big old crown of glory given to them. The reality is that that's not what that looks like. Like, this is what it looks like. What it looks like is he literally will be sitting in the temple. I'm sorry, I'm going to get this out of the way for a second. My dog's kind of infatuated with it. So I'm going to pause fishing for a bit. I use a crankbait, so it's kind of tough to focus and fish at the same time. Maybe sometime I'll rent a proper fishing boat and we'll go from there. But it says that all the nations will be gathered before him. So ultimately what's taking place is that when the Son of Man comes, and he will come in a cloud of glory, and he will rule with an iron fist, and there's going to be a war that day between the world and Jesus, and it's going to end like that, just like that, just ends just like that. Then once that's over, in the valley of decision, in the valley of Jehoshaphat, once all that ends, then he will then sit on his throne in the temple. Literally, he will sit on his throne. And the whole world will know that he is now in charge. The whole world will know who he is. The whole world will know what's going on. The whole world will see that the Antichrist in the world has been destroyed. And all that really remains is those who were part of that war. And they're all going to be faced with Jesus face to face, because it says that all the nations gathered to him. When a king returns and he rules this world, he's going to have all the nations gather to him. So all the nations will be gathering in Jerusalem. Literally, the whole world will come to Jerusalem, and he'll separate some on his left and some on his right. And that's going to be a very hard day for people. Very hard day for people. But it's also going to be a very good day for many people, because some are going to get separated on his right and some on his left. And in the end, when he does this separation, and I just kind of want to really show this visual, is that here he is sitting on his throne, literally sitting on his throne as a human in a glorified body. And then he'll gather together the entire world, and he'll separate some on his left and some on his right. And you won't have a choice. The king is you have to be submissive to the king at that point. There is no more deciding. There's no more, well, maybe I'll believe in this God in the clouds, or maybe I'll believe this thing that my grandparents told me about, but maybe not, because having fun is more fun. It's not like that anymore. It's suddenly very real. It's real now, but then you reach out and touch it. Like, there it is. Reach out and touch it. There's God, and you can see him with your eyes. And he's going to gather together his elect. Then he's going to gather together the whole world. And he's going to separate them out. You know, and again, everybody will have to be subject to that. No, you know, you can't say, well, I'm not going. I'm not going to go to that gathering. There won't be any choice. You know, there's no more elections anymore. There's no more wars anymore. There's no more police or any soldiers or any. It just all comes to an abrupt end, and then the king is ruling on this earth as he does in heaven. And that's what this world will be like. And just like heaven, you know, we can't corrupt heaven. You can't bring your sin into heaven. You know, if I tell one small lie, I can't bring that into heaven, then heaven's corrupt like earth is. It becomes the same thing, and God's obviously not going to allow that. Darkness can exist in the light. But here on earth, before all that, when this goes on for 1,000 years, before all the heaven stuff, it gets separated out. You know, Jesus as king, sitting on a throne. You know, imagine being part of a kingdom and the king's been gone and people just running amok, doing whatever they want. And the king comes back, he's going to gather together his whole kingdom. And some are going to be rewarded, and some are going to be punished. And it's not like that. It is literally that. You know, so when Jesus talks in parables before this conversation, he says, it is like this. But now when he's talking, this is literally what it will be. Not figurative, no more parables. This is what it'll be. And all those decisions that everybody makes, they're over. They're done. They're done. That's it. Done. You know, I think that's what's so great about this verse. You know, one, you never hear anybody preach on the parable, or you never hear anybody preach on the separation of the sheep and the goats, because that would contradict everything they're trying to build in their church, which is just come, say a couple things to me, say a couple magic words, enter into the glory of the Lord. But that's not what it's going to be like, ladies and gentlemen. He expects you to be about his business. Definitely expects you to be about his business. And then there'll be a day where you'll be doing whatever you're doing and you'll hear news. You'll know. The whole world will know. My dog's really having a hard time with my crankbait. It's funny. It's okay, buddy. So in the end, I just recommend you get ready. I'm going to stop fishing. It's kind of bugging my dog. Because what he says is, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him. And he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And I think that's what God has me doing. You know, if I was somebody to say, well, what are you doing, Mark? I think it's blowing a trumpet to let people know that everything you've been taught in the church, it's much deeper than what they make it. Because back, 1,000 years ago, they would have hung you if you didn't confess, imprisoned you if you didn't confess that Jesus was Lord, enslave you if you didn't confess that Jesus was Lord, because there's this concept that all you have to do is say these words. And today it's just a little more polite version of it, but it's the same message. Say these magic words and be saved, and then do whatever you want. Live for the world. Live in sin. Once saved, always saved. But once saved, if that is real, if it is real, then the Spirit will dwell within. And the Spirit's going to tell you to do some things. And if you're obedient to that thing, when Jesus returns, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. I can trust you with a little. I'm going to trust you with a lot. And I look at some who ignored that poking of the Holy Spirit, and he'll say, wicked servant, lazy and wicked servant, I never knew you. And that's about what you get. Those are your two options. It didn't say he separates some to his left and some to his right, and those who are kind of doing the right thing, or those who thought they were doing the right thing, he put in the middle. And then those who did this other thing, he put behind him, and he separated them into 4 categories. No, just 2. Some on his left, some on his right. And that's it. That's it. That's all he does. That's it. And I just don't think most people are going to find themselves on the good side of things. Because I believe most of humanity, when he gathers together the nations, most of the nations would have denied him. And then most of those who did not deny him, who said his name out loud or confessed that he was Lord, didn't do what he asked them to do. And that only leaves a few. That only leaves a remnant. That's it. You know, those who are in the goat category, it's going to be an abundance of goats. Only a few sheep. A lot of goats, just a few sheep. And in the end, all he wants you to do is just be about his business. But he's the king. He will literally sit on his throne with his angels will be here too, by the way. So him and his angels will be here ruling this earth. And you and I, God willing, will be there. And then there's going to be a day where the judgment comes out. And then from then on, 1,000 years living on this earth in his glory with the remnant. And that'll be what's left. You know, as we get into the separation of the sheep and the goats, I kind of was praying a little bit. This morning I had to take my sister to the airport before I came out here, and I was praying on the way back. It was just quiet and the sun was coming up, and I realized that the separation of the sheep and the goats here in Matthew, when we get to the end of 25, I think I got to keep going until we get to Jesus's death and his resurrection through the whole thing, because it's hard to tell somebody, you know, well, you should be doing what Jesus says you should do. You know, like if he tells you to do something, you should do that thing. But the reality is that to fully understand why you should be doing that thing is to fully understand what it is he did for you. Because that's when my heart changed as a Christian. You know, when I became a Christian and I said those magic words, it was real. And I believe I changed that day. But there wasn't any external change. You know, I still kept my sinful ways. But then there was a day when I was out jogging, and I only had one daughter at the time. That's my oldest daughter. And I thought about what it would be like to give your only child. And I realized I don't love anybody that much. There's nobody I love that much that I'm willing to sacrifice my only child. And then I was overwhelmed in that moment with the amount of love God has for me. Overwhelmed. I was jogging through an area in Kansas City called the Plaza at the time, and I literally stopped and got on my knees on the sidewalk and prayed right then. And everything changed. Everything changed in that moment. Because it's one thing to be obedient to a king, because he's the king. It's quite another to be obedient to the king, because he loves you so much that he's willing to lay down his life for you. It's a very different servanthood. It's one thing to be a servant because you're told to do some things and you're fearful you'll be a goat. It's quite another to do some things because somebody laid their life down for you and you know it to be true, and you're willing to do some things for them sacrificially as well. That's why I just don't think this thing on the water, it'll end in 40 days as far as we'll get through Matthew 25, but I think we have to keep going. I think we have to go to the end of Matthew, because the very next chapter is the plot to kill Jesus. As soon as he gets done with this conversation with the disciples, immediately the Bible turns to the plot to kill Jesus. And I don't think that's the order on mistake either. I think that this conversation showed the world what Jesus was about. And those who betrayed him, Judas that betrayed him, he was in this conversation too. He was there. He knew what sheep and goats were. Guys, I apologize for the distracting fishing. I'm trying makes sense in my head. I'm trying to fish a little bit while I'm out here because Jesus was a fisherman. Sorry, but it is distracting. I'll get it figured out. I think I just need a fishing boat. It's hard without a trolling motor to really pull some off. And I think my dog was very concerned about my crankbait. When I threw it in the water, he got worried and started. He's a very, very loving dog. Apparently he was concerned about my crankbait that I'd thrown it in the water. So sorry for the distraction. But I hope these videos are helping. They're definitely helping me. I've grown closer to God a lot over the last 30 some odd days, and I hope you have too. What a blessing this has been for me, and I pray it's a blessing for you as well. But more than importantly, I pray that these messages are hitting your heart, and I pray that there's some changes being made in everybody's lives, because changes are being made in my life too through this. You can't just say feed hungry people and then not go feed hungry people. Otherwise I'd be a hypocrite. So it changes my life too, makes me really think about what I'm doing as well. So I pray it's doing that for you as well. But in the end, he will literally sit on his throne. And I think that's what I was trying to drive home today, is that, people picture this as like you're kind of walking into the gates of heaven and then you're being judged, and Peter's, are you on the list if Peter lets you in? Like, that's cartoon stuff. This is real. He will literally stand as a human in his glorified body, and he'll sit on his throne, and all of the heavenly angels will be here too. They'll all be here too. This has been something that heaven's been waiting for a long time. Everything, the beginning of the Bible to the very end, all the civilization has all led to that moment right there. In that second, in that moment, with Jesus sitting on that throne, separating people out. The whole Bible from beginning to end, all the civilization, everything played out for that purpose. And when we get gathered to that place, we won't have wings or, we'll have to take trains and airplanes and buses to get to Jerusalem. But we'll have to go. The angels will come get us if we don't. And we'll be separated out. All the nations, not some of the nations, not America, not Israel. All the nations will be gathered. They'll all be gathered. It's not the king of Israel. He's the king of the world. No more elections, no more death. Hope that king dies so this king can rule. No, it's all over. It's done. It's just Jesus ruling. Chances are, and I just want to encourage you with this final thought, if this is hitting your heart and you kind of think, well, what more can I do? You're a sheep. You are a sheep. If this is hitting your heart and you're like, you know what, that's stupid. This is what that guy's saying, that's ignorant. I don't have time to go feed hungry people. You're a goat. I hope these videos are helping. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. Most important part of this channel, we take prayer requests, so please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.